Shortly you will hear from the Deputy Speaker of the House and MP for Ohario, Greg O'Connor. And Greg will open today and introduce a pre-recorded message from the Honourable Chris Hipkins, Minister of Police. We will then have two 20-minute presentations that our guest speakers will deliver in pairs. And finally, we'll close with today's event with a Q&A session that with our guest speakers. We'll have all four of them here. And then finally, we will have an overview from our Crime Stoppers and the role that they play for keeping our community and our people safe. If you are going to ask questions and you're in this room, please, I ask that you use that particular microphone. I know it might be a little bit daunting standing up on that wee pole, but if we don't use it, then the people online won't be able to hear what your question is. So if you could do that, thank you. So I'd now like to introduce Greg O'Connor. So Greg has served as a politician since retiring from police, and his role as president of the New Zealand Police Association, a position that he held for 21 years. Since entering politics in 2017, Greg has been a member of the Justice, the Social Services and Community, and the Finance and Expenditure Select Committees, and co-chairs the New Zealand, South and Southeast Asia Parliamentary Friendship Group alongside National MP Melissa Lee. So, hand over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner, for that introduction. Te hei mori ora, ina mana, ina reo, ina marawaka, nau mai haere mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. What I've just said is ina mana, a very important function, a very important meeting today, and what we're going to discuss, and the fact that you've brought us here is all part of the whole importance of it. So, ina mana, ina reo, of course, acknowledging my fellow speakers. You'll be hearing from some very intelligent, well-versed and well-informed people today, which is what this whole today is about, is making sure we're well-informed. And of course, ina marawaka, referring to the fact that we've all had to travel here today. Myself, only from my office about 3 metres down the corridor. Many of you have come, and I know some of your speakers have come from far away right for this very important topic. Also like to acknowledge Hayden Smith. Hayden's he's a wise man, and he knows how to look after himself, because on Monday night I found him hiding in a hotel restaurant in Kandala, where he was trying to stay away from the kids who were visiting his house for Halloween. So well done. So I think you avoided having to give out any lollies there. So that's the sort of man you do really want running your organisation. And when Hayden asked me to host this event here today, I had no hesitation in saying yes, because in my 41 years in police, we've seen the whole way that the crime scene has changed. And I know that the Assistant Commissioner, Sue Schwalger, I know in her time too, I used to train detectives, and the sort of things we used to train our detectives to do, a lot of them, I won't say they're redundant, but certainly there's a whole new set of tools that they use and need, because there's a whole new lot of crimes being committed. And it became very stark to me in particular, and I know that I'd like to welcome those in Malvina Major. I know that there's a large number of people there who are watching this today, and my in-laws there, who I would have to describe as some of the most target-hard people crime-wise, that had lived their lives, had never been victims of crime. They lived always in, shall we say, the good part of town. They always had their cars locked away at night. They didn't go out, they didn't drink, so they didn't go out anywhere where they were likely to be victims of violence, and so they'd never really been victims of crime. And even today, if you ask them if they'd been victims of crime, they say, well, no, not real crime, not the sort of stuff we read about in the paper. They lost $80,000 in a scam. And somehow they didn't sort of equate that with being real crime. Real crime was the ram raiders that we deal with, that we talk about. But as you'll all know, and as you'll no doubt hear about today, the sort of money, the sort of proceeds that people are getting away with now, the well-organised schemes coming out of Eastern Europe, coming out of Africa, coming out of all sorts of places, and unfortunately coming out of New Zealand too, are creating a whole new lot of victims with a whole new lot of crime and doing way more damage, certainly as much damage as a ram raid will do, that will occupy all the space on the 6 o'clock news. These are the things we don't hear about. So well done. I welcome Transparency International, welcome Crime Stoppers. I think this is the fact that you are here, the fact that you are now attempting to educate people on this type of crime just shows that you are keeping up with the trends, as we say, and that's what we expect of all our organisations. So again, the worried well were often the people who sat at home were least likely to be victims of crime when the crime was committed down in Courtenay Place at 11 o'clock at night. The people down there who are likely to be our grandchildren and children, they're not worried about it. We're more worried about it. So the worried well now are not the worried well, because these are the sort of crimes that you are very vulnerable to, and people who, if you've got a phone, if you've got a computer, you are more likely to be victims of this. So I'm looking forward to sitting here and hearing about this, and Ven, it is a real privilege to be here hosting today this event. And I hope that the messages that you'll take, those I understand there's a good audience listening at home, those of you at home will make sure that you just advise those who you know, if it doesn't look right, it's not right. And if you get into an event and start wondering, how did I meet this person? It was no different from when you travelled overseas and someone approached you. If they approached you, they probably had an angle. So, but that, I'll leave that to the expert to talk about that. I welcome you here today. I hope you enjoy today. More importantly, I hope you leave here better equipped to look after yourself and those you know and those you're advising than you were when you came here. Nā rewa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Now, I'm also here introducing, now the Minister couldn't make it. You'll see today there's not many politicians around here. The House is in recess, people are back in their electorates, back doing various things. But the Minister has got a message for you here today. It's the Minister of Police, Chris Hipkins, who I have to say is certainly one of our very accomplished ministers. And we're very lucky in police and those in police to have, as I say, a minister who's very much onto it, shall we say. So with no further ado, the message is ready to go.
New Zealand's threat landscape changed significantly, as it did all over the world in 2020, when we saw everybody working and learning from home. Fast forward to now, and some of those challenges are still there. With more things happening remotely, New Zealanders have become used to being contacted virtually rather than in person, and the bad guys know that. Behavioural Insights research conducted by the government's cybersecurity agency, CERT-NZ, has thrown up some really interesting perspectives from Kiwis. Generally speaking, the research found that those under 45 have a lot more confidence regarding cybersecurity than older audiences do. Sometimes they're a little bit too confident. Among older audiences, however, those with children at home tend to have more technology skills and cyber confidence. Older people are more concerned about the risk of cyber attacks or scams. We know that Kiwis are good at doing things like not clicking strange links or handing over information to strangers, but the scammers are aware of this, and they've changed their tactics to become a lot more sophisticated. There have been reports of incidents where scammers perfectly replicate messages from banks and couriers, fake websites that claim to be customs asking for a small fee and then stinging people for a hidden subscription, romance scams and fake charities preying on the generosity of New Zealanders. With the rise of cryptocurrency and NFTs, we've also seen scammers target those who are looking to invest. This can all seem overwhelming and too technical for some, but the good news is the way to be safe is simple. When you're approached online, simply pause, take a breath, maybe go make a cup of tea, and think about how realistic the approach is. Were you expecting a parcel? Does the opportunity seem a little bit too good to be true? And active prevention methods also work against these online threats. Long, strong, unique passwords, two-factor authentication, applying regular updates to your devices, and keeping your personal information secure. Those may sound a little more daunting to Kiwis who are less savvy online, but the government's here to help through the agencies that are here today. Taking these steps not only keeps yourself safe, but it also protects your whānau and your friends as well.
For the day.
Thank you, Greg. Right, it's now my pleasure to introduce our first two guest speakers, Sam Leggett and Brent Carey. So Sam Leggett is from CERT New Zealand as a senior analyst in the Threat and Incident Response Team at CERT NZ, a statutory entity established to improve cybersecurity in New Zealand. His priority focus is responding to incident reports and providing an actionable advice, coordinating major incidents across primary stakeholders and presenting on cybersecurity topics and trends. Sam will also focus more on phishing attempts and remote access phone scams and how to strengthen our personal detection and resilience to these types of scams. He's not here with a fishing rod, he's going to talk about phishing. And Brent is the Chief Executive Officer for NetSafe and holds a wealth of experience in regulatory privacy, safety and response environments, and has a comprehensive understanding of local and global online industries. NetSafe is an internationally renowned independent non-profit online safety organisation which works alongside government and telecommunications agencies to prevent online harm and to help New Zealand engage with online services and environments confidentially and safely. Brent is a member of the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution and Crisis Response Working Group of the Global Internet Forum for Counterterrorism. I'd like to hand over to Sam and Brent, please.
Thank you, Sue. Kia ora, everyone. As said, my name's Sam and I'm part of the Incident Response Team with CERT New Zealand. CERT stands for the Computer Emergency Response Team, and as it's sort of already been alluded to, we are a government organisation focused on improving cyber resilience and online safety for all New Zealanders. One of the main ways that we do this is by taking reports from the public, whether they are an individual, a member of a small to medium enterprise, or a large organisation. Anyone can make a report to us if they might be or are dealing with a cyber incident. We'll respond to those reports with some actionable, trusted advice on how to actually deal with that incident and hopefully set yourself up to be better positioned in the future so that you're not a victim again of the same kinds of incidents. One of the reasons I really want to highlight the importance of reporting these kinds of things is because often with these scams there are some things that we can do with that information behind the scenes to stop some of those campaigns and prevent those scams from affecting further people. Another reason it's so good to report to CERT New Zealand is because it can be quite difficult to know what the appropriate agency is to report these kinds of incidents to. If you're not sure, you can make a report to us, and through our connections and work that we do with a number of other government agencies, including the likes of police, we can ensure that that report gets into the hands of the correct organisation, or at the very least, point you in the right direction. Another reason why this reporting is so important is because it gives us the ability to report back on some of the data that we see about the threat landscapes and the things that people are actually dealing with. So that's on this slide here. Now that's going to be a little bit too small to see, but I'm going to talk through this. These are the incidents that have been reported to us by people aged 65 and over this year to date. So along the bottom is the most reported incident that we see, and that is phishing and credential harvesting. As it's been alluded to, I'm going to do a bit of a chat about phishing specifically. I'm also going to talk about another type of scam, which is specifically remote access or text scam calls. As we work down the list, we see that unauthorized access is the next thing, being scammed when buying or selling goods online, extortion emails, text scams or that remote access scam, malware, unauthorized or falsified transfer of money, scam phone calls, dating and romance scam, which my friend Brent will talk about, and the list goes on. Ultimately, what we see from this data is that this particular demographic is being targeted by a very wide range of scams online. Anyone online these days is a potential target, potential victim for these kinds of scams, and it's really important that we acknowledge that. So first and foremost, I want to talk to you about phishing. And this is both in the forms of phishing emails as well as phishing text messages. Any way that someone can get in touch with us online is a potential avenue for phishing for a scammer. So a little diagram on screen here shows exactly the life cycle of a phishing attack. So the attacker sends out an email to a victim pretending to be from a well-known organisation or company. If the victim clicks on the link contained in that email, they'll be taken to a phishing website, which these days looks really similar to the legitimate website. And the idea of this website is to get you to enter some form of personal information. It might be personal details, it might be your login details like your username and passwords, or it may be financial details like credit card numbers. Once you've entered that into the phishing website, the attacker will then scrape those credentials and either use them in further scams or to sell online to other attackers and scammers for their actions. And this is an example of a phishing email that we see quite regularly. Again, it's going to be a little bit too small to see, but there's a few things that I want to highlight on here. So this email claims to come from Waka Kotahi, or the NZ Transport Agency. Claims that your your license needs to be renewed, and that there'll be a $103 cost of that renewal. Now this email looks pretty good, it's got the right sort of branding for NZTA, but there are a few things that give this away as phishing. If we have a look at the sender email address, we can see that that email comes from webmaster@retratehereuse.com. Nothing to do with NZTA, and what we would expect is a legitimate email from NZTA would have an email address of @nzta.govt.nz. So the first thing that we can check is where that email has come from to determine whether or not it's legitimate. As the sender address of this email is completely unrelated to NZTA, it's a good indication that this particular email is not legitimate. Another thing that we can check is the link that they're trying to get us to click on. So that button in the middle on the right-hand side says Renew Now. That's actually a link that will take you to the phishing webpage. And if we hover over that, we see that the address for that page is waterpuresystems.com. Again, not related to NZTA at all, completely different to what the email claims to be related to, and that's another really solid indication that this email is not legitimate. If we're still not sure at this point, one of the things that we can do is actually contact the organisation directly. NZTA, get their website up and find the number that you can call directly on, and you can have a chat to them about this particular email to confirm whether or not that's legitimate. And contacting the organisation that some form of contact, either an email or a text message, comes from is a really great tool in determining whether or not that contact is genuine. But it's not just emails that are targeting people. We're seeing phishing scams through text messages now as well. This is a very common one that we've seen. It claims to be from an organisation called Wise or TransferWise. And they're a money transfer organisation that often handle transfers internationally. So this text message claims that you have a $4,000 transaction that has been attempted on your account, and that if you would like to view or cancel that, you just need to click on the link there. Now, another thing that we can check here, similarly to the email sender address, is the mobile number that these text messages are coming from. Very commonly, big organisations or reputable organisations will use text services to send their messages out, and they will come from short code numbers, 3 or 4 digits long. But in this case, each one of these text messages has come from a number starting with the code +61. That's an Australian number. So all these mobile numbers are for Australian mobile numbers, personal Australian mobile numbers. And that's a really good indication that this has not come from a genuine or reputable organisation. Again, if we're still concerned, and often what we see is that reputable organisations such as our bank might be the brand that's being mimicked in these kinds of messages. If we see that and we're still concerned that maybe there has been a $4,000 transaction on our account, we obviously don't want to click that link because we might be at risk of phishing. Again, we can contact that organisation directly, have a conversation with them. Specifically for your bank, you can probably find a number for that bank on the back of your card. You give them a call, let them know that you've received a text message claiming that there's been a $4,000 transaction, and they should be able to confirm that for you. The next type of scam that I really want to talk about is one that's a little bit more impactful, less common, but can have some really damaging impacts to individuals. So this is a text scam or a remote access scam. And essentially this starts with a cold call. So the attacker will call a victim claiming to be from a well-known company or organisation, very commonly your internet provider or potentially your bank. They'll claim that there's an issue with your computer or your bank account and that it requires urgent attention, and usually they will then ask you to download some form of remote access software. And that is a really good red flag to be mindful of. Anyone calling you up asking you to download software, specifically remote access software, is very likely a scammer. There are some legitimate uses for this, but it's not very common, and that will be with a company that you've interacted with directly, not on the back of a cold call. Once they have that remote access software installed, they set up that connection with your computer, and they ask you to log into your bank account. At that point, they have access to your computer, and now you've logged into your bank account, they in turn have access to your bank account as well. From there, they can access that bank account and steal all your money. And this is why this can be so damaging, because people, unfortunately, provide access to their computer, then in turn to their bank account, and as a result, they can see all their finances taken away. As you can imagine, this is pretty significantly damaging. So any time that you get a call and someone is asking you to download any type of software, that should be a really good red flag for you. At that point, we can call our bank directly, we can hang up that phone call, and I really like what the Minister said about taking a moment, taking a breath. That's one of the most important things when we have this kind of contact coming through. There's some red flags, we're not sure about it, take that moment, step back from the contact, hang up the phone call, whatever it might be, get in touch with that organisation directly and confirm that that kind of contact you're receiving is in fact legitimate. Those are all the scams that I wanted to talk about today, but I want you to walk away with a couple key things. If the only thing you walk away with today is the fact that there is an organisation that you can report cyber incidents to and get some advice, that's great. cert.govt.nz. Anyone can make a report of any kind of cyber incident that they might be dealing with, and we will get back in touch with them with some actionable advice that they can trust and hopefully move forward through the scam and not become a victim again. Also, if you do receive any email, phone call, or text message contact that raises any red flags or any concerns for you, take that moment, take a breath, have a think about the kind of contact that you've received, especially where a sense of urgency has been created in that messaging. Around those text messages, we see that sense of urgency created in the sense that they're claiming a $4,000 transaction has occurred on our account. I personally can't afford to lose $4,000, so that would certainly create some concern for me. And this is a very common method of attackers. Create that sense of urgency to get those victims clicking on links, providing information in a quick time frame. If that sense of urgency is created for you, take a moment, take a break, have a think about the contact that organisation directly and confirm that that is legitimate or not. Those are some of the best things that you can do in the face of these scams. But if you do need some additional help, don't hesitate to report to Cert New Zealand and we will get back to you with some actionable advice. I'm going to hand over to Brent now, who's going to talk about some of the reporting they see at NetSafe, as well as other types of scams that they see over there.
Kia ora katoa, ko Taranaki te Monga, ko Tangatra te Aotearoa, ko Tokamaru te Waka, ko te Aotearoa iwi te iwi, ko Ngātai te whiti te hapu, ko Brent Carey toko ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you to the Minister for the introduction and also to the Deputy Speaker. I'm very pleased to talk a little bit about scams. It's really about fraud prevention, and these sorts of lightning talks are really important because getting around to the community to talk about what we're seeing will help you have a better online experience. And we know here at NetSafe that we have a growing mature age audience eager to keep up to date with the latest online technology. And in the last year alone, more than 20,000 people aged 65 plus visited netsafe.org.nz to find out how to stay safe online. And NetSafe's purpose is to support people to have a safe and positive online experience. So we also don't want you to leave today thinking that everything is bad about being online. So briefly, some stats. There is a growing number of reports of economic loss. In the quarter alone last year, we had more than $13 million worth of losses reported to NetSafe, and that is just in a 3-month period. Reports to NetSafe of scams have risen from 13,000 up to 15,000 a year. And in the 2020 calendar year alone, NetSafe received 3,500 reports from people over 65, and 58% of those related to scams. Here's just a sample of the types of scams that the mature age group are reporting to us, similar to what Sam's talked about, but worryingly, a trend in our area is sextortion cases involving blackmail in relation to allegations of someone turning a webcam on and recording people. And that's sort of what I want to focus on, because it's a growing issue in relation to scams, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I just also want to give a shout out to people online in the regions. We get reports mostly from the major cities. 1% to 2% are in some of our regional areas, and having an event like this in a hybrid format is really important so that we can get our message out to more New Zealanders. And a focus of ours is uplifting that level of reporting from across New Zealand. So a little bit of about romance scams. While we're bringing you this session, it's important to think about what a romance scam might mean. And it is someone trying to take advantage of someone looking for a relationship online. And scammers will use dating websites, social media to build relationships with someone. And once they've got that person's trust, they'll often ask for money or gifts or personal information. So I want to make everyone aware that that is a form of a psychological tactic that they'll use, is to build trust with you. And I want everyone to be aware that this is going on more and more. And in the lead up to Christmas and between December and Valentine's Day, this is a traditional scam that we will see circulate in the New Zealand community. And so it's important that we talk about what that might look like. It is the 9th most reported scam to NetSafe, and it does, though, account for nearly 15% of all the economic loss. Romance scams are particularly sinister because they've boomed during the COVID era, and many people feel lonely and are looking for companionship online. And dating websites are the #1 choice for scammers, but also online games like Words with Friends and other ways for people to stay connected. So we want people to be alert but not alarmed. What are the warning signs in relation to romance scams? Well, don't be pressured into making a decision, and we heard the Minister talk about taking a pause. Scammers will create that sense of intimacy and urgency. Be very suspicious of any requests for money, and we've heard that already today. Scammers will often ask for credit card details, but they'll also ask for gift cards or other non-traditional forms of payment. And don't click on messages. That's been a reoccurring theme today. Be very wary of any contact out of the blue. And also make sure that if you do suspect a scam, that you report it to either CERT, the police, or also to NetSafe. So do think about that. And if there's one new skill that I would hope that you could all learn, and I encourage you to go back after this event, it's understanding what a reverse image search is. Because in the romance space, they often take models and other people's pictures that are not them, and they will use them on their profile. So I encourage you to look on the NetSafe website for what a reverse image search is, and teach yourself that skill so you can recognize whether it's a legitimate image or not. And here we all have a part to play in keeping everyone safe online. So do not be judgmental of someone who falls victim to a scam. That you need to be an upstander and a supportive friend, and make sure that if someone comes to you who may have been a victim, you try and help them to stop communicating with their scammer. You do try and encourage them to record any identifiable information about the person, like an email or a profile, and make sure you report that to people. So I encourage us all to be aware of what the scams are like. And for more help about scams, Sam and I have put together a little bit of a resource, and hopefully these slides will be circulated. We've just got some key ones there that we'd encourage you all to check out. So thank you for your attention, and hopefully use what you've learnt today to spread the word, to be alert. Just ask someone, your neighbour, who they might have been interacting with online today, and you never know what advice you might be able to give them. So thank you. Back to Sue.
Thanks, Sam and Brent. I think what was said before about stopping and taking a breath has been a bit of a theme here, is not react to something immediately, take some time, think about it, even ask some advice before you push that button.
Before we go any further, is it possible for us to have copies of all these slides before we go home? Not before you go home, but we'll be able to post them so you'll be able to get access to them.
Yep, great. Right, our next speakers are Dr. Jordan Alexander and Simon Howard. So Dr. Alexander is an international best-selling author, coach and facilitator that is passionate about helping humans have great relationships. Jordan immigrated from Canada and has been living in New Zealand for nearly 30 years. She's blessed with 2 Kiwi daughters and a rich cultural heritage from Ukrainian and Croatian parents. She started Pangea Consulting 20 years ago and has worked across the motu and internationally with corporate, government and non-profit clients, specialising in strategy, people and workplace culture. Now happily married, her first online dating experience ended in a romance scam that cost her circa $140,000. Motivated by her own heartbreaking experience in 2018, Jordan founded Love Assist Associates to help others avoid the dramas and the distress faced by those looking for love. Jordan offers relationship advice, coaching, and tools for smarter and safer dating. She has authored several books, including I Love You, Send Money, and her latest Real Me, Better We, which takes inexperienced learner daters to decode digital dating and to go from single to success. Her vision is to love assist 1 million hearts by 2025. Today she will be sharing a bit of her own story, online experience, and the trends she is seeing with mature love seekers with the Love Assist community. Her talk will focus on the human side of the technology equation of romance scams. Simon Howard is ZX Security. He is the Chief Technology Officer and founder for ZX Security, a specialist IT security consultancy that works with businesses to understand their cybersecurity and to assess and address their cybersecurity risks. He has been active in New Zealand information security space for almost 2 decades and helps to run New Zealand's largest security conference focused on the latest advancements in offensive and defensive information security tools and techniques. I now hand over to Jordan and Simon.
Thank you, Sue. A quick show of hands. How many out there know of someone that's met their match online dating? Okay, so about half of new couples are meeting online these days, and that number is going to jump up to 70% in the next 10 years. Online dating is a great way to meet people, and I'll share ways that you can be a smarter and a safer dater. But First, a question. If I gave you $60 billion, where would you spend it? Would you spend it on education, maybe climate change? You might buy a new hospital or spend it in health. I bet no one said criminal activities like drugs or guns. Yet that's where we lose $60 billion each year globally to romance scams. In my first time online, in just 6 months, I sent $140,000 to a man that I met on a dating site. I was not heart smart. Some of you might think this was my dating profile picture based on that story, and perhaps it should have been. But 10 years ago, I was in my mid-40s, divorced, a single mom, successful at work, and happy enough. But I was lonely. If you asked me then, would you fall prey to a romance scam? I'd have laughed and said it could never happen to me. I didn't know that I was the sweet spot for scammers. I was groomed, I fell in love, I thought I was smart, but emotionally vulnerable. It could happen to me, and it did. I did all the don'ts of online dating. So why, after losing my home in this incredibly devastating and embarrassing experience, would I help people go online dating? Because we're human and we're wired for love. The research shows that relationships have proven benefits for our health, for our happiness, for our longevity. If technology makes it easier for us to connect, let's use it, but we have to be using it wisely. So I help others avoid the distress and shame and connect safely. We need to learn that dating is different from the olden days, when a newspaper ad matched upright, get this ladies, patient and sedate young ladies to honorable gentlemen. Technology has changed. Our DNA has not. And connect, we do. The number of mature daters is growing. Couples over 50 worldwide are divorcing in droves. So think about Bill and Melinda Gates. And along with those that are bereaved, the adventurous digital immigrants are getting back on the horse and spending time in this new wild west of online dating. 7 Sharp recently reported that Project Gender said that 50-plus Kiwis are more likely than 30-somethings to send an intimate pic, which scammers love to use as blackmail, and I think Brent had mentioned that. Don't tell others when they're going on a date. Have you not heard of stranger danger? And almost half don't use protection in bed. I'm not going to say anything about that one. I 100% believe that you can find love online, and that age is but a number, but you have to swipe with caution. Trust must be earned. You're meeting strangers, and 50% online lie on their profile. Half of them are already in a relationship. There are new online predators with sophisticated scams, as we've heard, and there are too many victims with the numbers rising. You can reach out to Love Assist before you date, get heart smart with courses and coaching, and if you encounter a scam victim, as Brent said, be kind. We learned that in COVID. Don't ask, what were you thinking, like my best friend. Listen and empathize without judgment, and focus on what you can do, like reporting the crime, which I was far too embarrassed to do. Be smart and safe out there and avoid these 10 traps that I've put together in a little tool that's on our website.
Are you online dating, but worry about romance scams? Remember to never send money, like ever. And watch for these 10 red flags scammers love to use. Has a MacGyver-type profession in offshore business ventures, different time zones. Shares a tragic family event, appearing vulnerable and needing your sympathy. Asks you to relocate from the dating site to personal email, isolating their prey. Has poor grammar, spelling, and sends replies that appear out of context. Is retiring, but needs someone to share the fruits of their labors with. Says romantic cliches like how destiny or fate brought you together. Asks for help to cash a check or access their banking, since their Wi-Fi doesn't work. Makes personal encroachments, asking for your address to send flowers or gifts. Sends lots of photos with friends, family, having fun, so they seem very personable. Avoids meeting face-to-face, makes excuses or last-minute changes. For more intimate details of what to avoid, read my True Romance Scam Experience. I love you. Send money. Please be safe out there. Have fun online dating, and I hope you find true love. Just remember, never send money.
I'll hand it over to the good-looking one in our group.
Thanks, Jordan. Kia ora, everyone. All right. So as we've heard today, not all scams are romance related, and I'm going to talk through, because I work in cybersecurity, people often come to me and they're like, Simon, you know about computers, here's some horrific scam that I've fallen victim to, can you please help? So the investment scam was a woman that I met and who had lost through romance, and then which romance scam which led into an investment scam had lost $400,000, which was terrible. And in that situation, there was nothing that we could do for her to get the money back. Blackmail, I've dealt with a young teenager, someone friended them on Instagram, they then said, hey, let's go off onto Google Meet, have a video conference. He did some things he wasn't proud of during that video conference, and then the scammer said, look, if you don't give me $100 via Western Union, I'm going to send the video of this to all your friends. Vouchers, so my CEO for the company gets an email purporting to be from me saying, hey, Ian, can you whip down to the store and get like a couple of $100 worth of iTunes vouchers for me, please? And then he said, well, what do you need these for, Simon? I said, I didn't send that email, mate. He said, okay. Computer and internet issues. So my wife was working at Brooklyn Play Centre, looking after the kids there, and they're all running around. Everything's very hectic, and the telephone rings. They've got a landline in there, and someone's on the telephone saying, "Oh, hello, is your internet running?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think it is." And they're like, "Well, is there some flashing lights on it?" And she looks up at the modem, and there's flashing lights on it. And this person must know about computers because they clearly know there's flashing lights on my modem. And then it continues, and it's basically getting to the point where she's up on a ladder looking at the modem, looking at these flashing lights, wondering what's next, and then she thinks, shit, this is a scam. And it was. The next step in that scam would be, oh, we need access to your computer, and as the CERT team talked about, like getting into your bank account and then stealing all your money. Which leads on to the recovery scam. So the young woman I talked to lost $400,000. She then went online, onto Facebook, I think, and said, look, I've fallen victim to this scam. And then there's people that search for the word scam on Facebook, jump on that, and then message you and say, yo, I can get your money back for you. My neighbour had his motorbike stolen. He jumps on Facebook. Has anyone seen my motorbike? It was stolen last night from our street up in Brooklyn. And then he gets a message from someone saying, we've got this special number plate tracking technology. We can get your motorbike back for you. All it will cost is $150. And so he comes across the road to my house. It's like, Simon, is this true? Can they get my motorbike back? And he's so excited about getting his motorbike back, about the possibility his baby's going to be back in his hands, that he hasn't really thought, like, what is this magical GPS tracking technology? How has this company got it, and how did they even know my motorbike was stolen? And yeah, all of these are scams. Hi, Mum, my phone just broke. Can you delete that number and save this one? And Mum's replying, who are you? I'm the oldest one. I don't have any children. So my mother-in-law got this isn't from her phone, but she got a message on WhatsApp that was very similar to this from my wife, or purporting to be from my wife. And so instead of like picking up the phone and ringing my wife's phone number to say, oh, have you lost your phone, dear? She starts replying to the individual, and again, it's some kind of scam where they want to extract some money from her. But then she thinks, hey, this is weird, and my son-in-law works in cybersecurity. I know what, I'll give him a ring. And she rings me up and said, Simon, I've heard Laura Jane's lost her phone, is she okay? And it's like, no, she's right here, and I pass the phone to her, and then they have a chat, and everything's good. But she did think there. That was great. Before she gave away her life savings, she thought, well, this is weird. I'm just going to ring someone else I know that's close to them and confirm that whether or not it's an issue. So I've travelled a lot around the world, and hands up here who's travelled before around the world. Yep, and hands up who's read one of these Lonely Planet books before. They're awesome, and so whenever we travelled, we'd always get the Lonely Planet for whatever region we're going to, and I'd read all the cool places I was going to go, and then I went to the scam section. So these books always have a section in them related to scams. And I would, so when I was in Thailand, I knew what the scams were. When I went to India, I knew what the scams were. There'll be like a jewel scam where someone like got some jewel and then like, oh, come and buy some more, and they take you away somewhere and it's full of jewels, but they're not real jewels. When I was in Delhi, there was a scam, and mainly a crime area, like this street here. Be careful of pickpockets. It's really packed and busy, and it's likely you're going to get pickpocketed. So I'd read that, I'd thought about it, and I thought, well, I'm not going to trust my passport in my room because my room's super sketchy. We were paying for like rock bottom prices for all the places we stayed. And so I had my passports in my pocket. I walked down the street that I knew about was like dodgy and that there were scam artists and stuff. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around this way, and meanwhile someone else is in this pocket here, and they've taken out my passports and they're gone. Walked down the street another couple of steps, no passports. And so even though I knew about the scams, I knew about the danger in this area, I didn't know about the tapping on the shoulder. That was a new one to me, but I still felt victim to the scam. But what you need to do in this context with online stuff is educate yourself to all the scams that are out there, right? So we heard that, I think on the NetSafe website, they've got a list of up-to-date scams. And what you can do on the Stuff website is scroll down to the technology section, and guaranteed every day there'll be something to do with a scam. And you can read about that article, educate yourself in the latest scam of the day. Your homework is to go onto Disney Plus. If you don't have Disney Plus, sign up. It's great. And watch The Con. And then head over to Netflix and watch The Tinder Swindler. These are all online documentaries, really well produced, all about online scams and dating and romance and stuff. And then if you don't want to go on Netflix or Disney, but you prefer listening to podcasts and some audio, you can put this in your car or on your headphones or something. Check out Sweet Bobby. It's a really good podcast about online scams. Cool, so some key takeaways. If you aren't a digital native, if you didn't grow up with a computer or device in your hand like my children did, then it pays to educate yourself first. Not everyone on the internet is as honest as all you good folk are. Like a lot of people think, well, I'm so honest, I'm such a good person, why isn't everyone good like me? Well, a lot of people come from different circumstances, they're desperate to make money, and they are doing anything they can to take your money away from you. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Don't blame the victim, be empathetic with your friends who have had a bad time in this space. And talk with your friends and family about the scams. Go and watch one of these TV shows on Netflix or Disney Plus, or listen to the podcast and chat to your friends about it. Read those articles and stuff, and when you're having a cup of tea in the morning with your partner or your friend, like chat about that telephone scam that you heard someone fell victim to down in Dunedin last week. Like educate yourselves as well as a group. Cool. Thank you.
Fantastic. I really want to say well done, in particular for you, Jordan, for putting yourself out there. It's not easy to say, I fell for this. And we do find that a lot of people who are subject to scams are far too embarrassed to report it because they think that we will judge them. So well done, very brave. Well, thanks. Some question times. Can I ask the other two presenters to come back up to the stage, please? And now is some times for some questions. I'm hoping that there are some questions. Otherwise, you might have to hear from me. Sorry, can I ask you to come to the mic? That lovely, thank you.
If a phishing email arrives and it's forwarded, does that forwarding leave a trail and that new address that it's forwarded to is harvested by the phisher?
If you forward a phishing message from your email to someone else and onto your friend or something, it's only when you click on that link within the phishing email and then enter your username and password into it does bad things happen. Forwarding it around, the phisher may be able to see that someone opened the email, but until you enter your username and password, that's when the bad things happen.
Some more?
Hello. I would like to ask how dangerous it is, and I've heard that it is. People of our age are interested in a lot of causes, and we sign a lot of petitions, or we're asked to. And I have heard that that is a rich fishing ground for scammers, even though you've got security on your device. Is this in fact a case?
So what we see is that scammers and attackers will use pretty much any narrative that they can in their messaging to try and make victims out of people. Something we saw quite a lot in the likes of COVID lockdowns. So in that situation, everyone was at home and there were a lot of parcels being delivered and ordered by everyone. And the scammers would use this as a way to change the narrative, change the wording of their message to claim that you had a parcel waiting to be delivered, it just needed to clear customs, and I think this was mentioned a little bit earlier, that you had to pay a $1.50 customs fee, which actually resulted in you later being a victim of a subscription-based scam that would take a greater amount of money out of your account. So in that sense, yes, any sort of narrative that a scammer can use to make it more likely that you're going to click on a link and provide some personal information is a good avenue for them to utilise, and we certainly see that they are utilising all of those things. So the phishing email claiming to have a link to a petition that is for a good cause and requires your signature is definitely an avenue that a scammer would use to try and get someone to click on that link and provide that information. So being mindful of, again, where those messages are coming from, what kind of wording and language it's using, is it creating a sense of urgency, is it trying to get some really sensitive personal information out of you? These are all good things to take into account before clicking on that link and providing any information.
Thank you. More questions? Yep. Certainly.
Oh, Dad, when you're signing those petitions, you don't need to put your email address in there. So if you're on the street and they're collecting that data for something they may be going to submit to government, just put your name on there, perhaps.
I was just going to ask whether you think that people are generally a bit too free with information. For instance, you could, in my view, I might be wrong, you can do a lot with a cell phone number, and people are often asked in public to give their cell phone number, and it's repeated back to them. Well, am I right in thinking that this is a security threat or not?
Yeah, the risk in providing pieces of information like your cell phone number or your email address is that it's an avenue for that contact to occur. So once your mobile number is kind of out there and scammers are aware of it, they can target that number with these kinds of text messages, or similarly with your email address. If that gets out there, scammers are aware of it and they can start targeting you with those email accounts. So the risk in being too free with those kinds of pieces of information does make you more likely to receive that kind of contact and be a target for those kinds of scams. So to Simon's point, I guess not sharing that information where we're not needed to, we're not required to, is a really good step to take, and being mindful that when we are sharing that information, it may result in those kinds of emails or text messages coming our way.
I've got a quick question because I've had this happen myself. When you respond to someone who's sent a scam, I got a scam from a guy I knew was in Saudi Arabia. He said he'd been assaulted in Paris and needed help. Now, I responded to that, and I said, "Where do I know you from?" And they never responded back. But is there any danger in responding?
The there's no danger in responding in the first instance, but then if they're getting you to do something like, oh, can you open this link or click on this file or open this attachment, that's when the risk can occur. So you're best off just to delete it and ignore it.
Yeah, that response itself doesn't carry any risk in and of itself. Again, if you're responding and you're providing something to them, that's where that risk could kind of come into place. But in your specific situation, you responded to get a little bit more information out of them, and they never responded because they couldn't provide that, and that was a good way for you to sort of ensure or determine that that was in fact a scam, not legitimate contact.
We hear a lot about two-step verification. Where does that fit on all this, please?
That's a great question. So two-step verification's got a lot of different terms: multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentications, two-step verification, all kind of referring to the same thing. And that's an additional layer of protection for your online accounts. So it's something you would enable for each individual account. Let's say it's for your email account. You enable two-factor authentication for your email account, and after that, every time you try to log into that account, you are required to provide a second layer of authentication. That might be that you have your mobile number associated with the account and you receive a text message that contains a code that you need to enter. Might be that you have an app on your phone that generates that code for you, or something along those lines. So it's additional layer of protection for each of your online accounts, and you can kind of go through and enable that for each individual account as you see fit. Enabling it for all your online accounts can be quite a mammoth task, so we always recommend to start with those really important priority accounts, things like your bank account, email accounts, social media, anything that has really sensitive personal information or financial information. Start with those, get that extra layer of protection there, and work down that list.
I've sometimes used the Apple support desk to solve problems, and then they ask you if they can see your screen. How dangerous is it to enable them to do that? Because I have done it in the past.
If you've initiated the conversation with Apple, then that's okay. If it's someone purporting to be from Apple contacting you and it's out of the blue, then that would be a risk.
That's a relief, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you've gone through the official Apple website. You've initiated that contact. To someone's point, there's probably something that you can trust. It's when someone reaches out of the blue, cold calls us, cold emails us, whatever it is, and then they're requesting that kind of access. That's when we should be really worried about that. Yeah.
You had a yes.
I mean, I think we're probably all subject to endless scams and rubbish coming over, spam. But I'm interested as when these are reported to you, do you ever catch up with these people? What happens to them? Or do you just note it and just tell people about them?
That's a very good question. As you can imagine, with often these kinds of scams or attacks, the individuals perpetrating them are located overseas, and by the time you can sort of get a bit of information about who they are, where they are, typically they've moved on to somewhere else. So actual attribution or catching the bad actors can be really difficult, but what is beneficial of reporting these things, take a phishing email, for example. If we can get a copy of that phishing email, we can take the link that's contained in it, and we can put that into a number of different tools that are used as sort of security features on computers and devices and things like that, and it will actually block you being able to get to the phishing page in that case. So if that's an indicator or a URL that we're aware of, we've put it into these feeds. If you're protected by those kinds of pieces of technology, then even if you do click on that link, it's not going to allow you to get to that page. It's going to stop you from even getting there. And you might have seen this in the form of Google Chrome. You might have been trying to go to a site. You get a big red screen that says, this site is deceptive. So that's a warning that's been produced because that website, that web address is known to be malicious. So while catching the bad actors can be really difficult and is probably more in the realm of law enforcement, there are some things that we can do to hopefully prevent these scams from affecting more people and creating more victims. Yep, absolutely. Reporting. Yeah, absolutely. Reporting gives us more information to action, things to look at and take action against, but also it keeps us aware of what's happening in the landscape. And if we can stay up to date with the kinds of threats and scams that are out there, then we can better provide information to people to keep them up to date with those things as well.
Don't you think part of the problem is that online banking forces a vulnerable section of the population to use online banking, that it makes them far more able to these scams to be perpetrated?
Yeah, certainly, especially in individuals who feel less confident with navigating things like the internet, it can sort of exacerbate that risk landscape. Unfortunately, as time goes on and things become more digitalised, that is something that those organisations are kind of getting people to move into. So I guess the best thing to do is look at things like your bank account and take those first initial steps to ensure that you've got good security there. That's things like long, strong, unique passwords and two-factor authentication. Again, start with those really important priority sensitive accounts like your bank account. And that's going to give you a good initial security. And then the other side of that is having good awareness around the kinds of scams that are targeting this information. Simon mentioned a couple of really good tools to use, like NetSafe's Scam Gallery, but also for your bank. If you head to your bank's website and search something along the lines of scams, typically every major bank in New Zealand has some page producing information on the scams that their customers are specifically seeing. So that way you can get a little bit more insight on the types of scams that you as a customer of that bank are likely to see, so that you can stay up to date and aware of what's going around to keep yourself safe.
Thanks. We've got time for one more.
So folks, how important is it for all of us retired people who have got a really good, strong password to change it so regularly? What's your thoughts around passwords? Thanks.
That is a very good question. And depending on the service or the platform that you're using, you might be forced into changing those passwords. It may simply be a requirement of that platform. To actually manually go in and change the password yourself, if you've got a really good, long, strong, unique password, you're not using it anywhere else, it doesn't have your personal information, unless that password gets captured in a data breach or you've handed that over in a phishing campaign or something like that, then that password is a good one to leave in place, especially where it's unique and not used anywhere else, nice and long and strong. And that's one that we can keep there until sometime that maybe we need to actually address that and change that. If your passwords are good, it's not something you have to constantly change, but you may have to change those depending on the requirements of the platform. And in those situations, it's very common, very human nature-y to simply iterate a number that's somewhere in the password. That is quite a common sort of password pattern that attackers are aware of. And so if you are required to change your password, just avoiding those really common patterns is key to make sure that it's not going to be easily guessed or cracked by those attackers.
Great. Thank you, panel. Done. I'd now like to call to the stage, just for a brief comment, is Hayden Smith, CEO for Crime Stoppers.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks to all the speakers. One of the things I wanted to point out is that we have you've probably heard today about NetSafe, you've heard about CERT New Zealand, the police. Everyone has a contact point. And what should be coming up on the screen very shortly is the number that we want you to all list or put down, because that is the common number that we want you all to use. And just write that down. Or, now they're sort of 7 to 7 during the week, but at any time, 24 hours below. Every other time at weekends or whatever, you've got the police number, 111, 105, whatever. But I also want to explain where Crime Stoppers comes into the play. You report to these agencies. You report to CERT New Zealand, police, NetSafe, etc. You don't report to us. What you pass on to us is intelligence that for whatever reason, you don't want to come through the front door. You may be embarrassed, you may be concerned, but it involves something that might be on the dark side of crime or whatever. And for that, you have Crime Stoppers. So you can call Crime Stoppers at any time, 24 hours a day, 0800 555 111, or you can go online to crimestoppers-nz.org, and that is 24 hours, and that will be distributed through the police and then to wherever it needs to go. So these are the guys that you want to be in touch with on a day-to-day basis. But if you have been ripped off or had a scam, you don't want it to be public, but you do want these organisations to know it happened, then they'll do it confidentially. But if you've heard the latest conspiracy theory and you don't like it, then we are 100% anonymous. Come to us, they'll never know who phoned, what your IP address is, what your email address is, what your cell phone number is. And that's why Crime Stoppers exists, and that's why we support all these agencies in making sure that they're there for the front door and we're there if that door's not available to you and you want to come through the back door, which is Crime Stoppers. And that's it for today. Back to you, Sue, to closing statements.
Thank you, Hayden. Again, I want to thank Sam, Brent, Jordan and Simon for sharing their knowledge with us for the discussion here today. It's been a really important conversation and I want to express my thanks to Hayden for driving this and the work and the effort, and I know the effort that's been put in with the emails going backwards and forwards, not just daily but almost by the hour as it got closer to the time. But great, and thanks for you for pulling this together. It's a really important conversation for us to be having. You know, the cyber environment, as we know, can be daunting, and particularly when society is moving so far into the technology space that almost everything becomes online. So while the focus has now been on the less experienced and those comfortable with technology, the discussion today highlights some really practical things and simple steps that you can do to keep yourself, your families and your loved ones safe. We will be putting the live streamed event online on the website for everyone to be able to access. But I would like to acknowledge the support of Crime Stoppers, Transparency International, CERT New Zealand, NetSafe, New Zealand Police, Love Assist Associates and ZX Security. We know that experiencing crime can be devastating. It can make us feel even more vulnerable than we are, and even embarrassed, which can make it even harder for someone to come forward. Remember that whatever reason whether you want to report or you don't want others to know, I recommend again Crime Stoppers. The information that we get from Crime Stoppers is helpful to understand the trends. Special mention to Academy Group here and here for who have covered the costs for the live streaming, and it has been great to be able to have people online as well as people here in person. Also want to thank again Greg O'Connor, you are, and for hosting the event. This is a wonderful venue, and we really appreciate being able to do that here. So finally, my thanks to you, the audience, online and presence. Without you, we would just be pretty much talking to ourselves, but it is really important that when you go home, you're talking to your friends, families, loved ones, that you spread the message. There has been some great advice for each and every one of us, because we're all subject to it, that we can share others. So the more we know, the more we can share, and the safer that we will be. So on that note, there is still some food on your way out, but feel free to stay and have a quick chat with our experts here. But thank you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.